All right, we are going to get started here. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are joining us from today. My name is Alex Nelson. I'm a marketing manager at Rivery, and I'm pleased to welcome everyone to this live webinar session. So first, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. So we're joined by Aaron Franz, Senior Technology Alliance Manager at Looker, as well as Taylor McGrath, Head of Customer Solutions at Rivery. I'm going to quickly provide an overview of today's agenda before handing it over to Taylor to kick off our presentation for today. So to begin, we'll be discussing the core tenets of a data stack, specifically for social analytics. We'll provide a brief overview of Rivery and Looker, and then we'll cover analyzing engagement and performance across social channels, which will be supported by a live demo of Rivery's Social Analytics Looker block, which is a new plug-and-play solution containing data pipelines and visualizations to track and analyze your engagement metrics across Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll then conclude the session with a live Q&A, where we'll answer questions submitted via the Q&A panel, which is located at the top right of your screen. So please feel free to send us your questions at any time throughout this presentation, and we'll do our best to get those answered for you. I also want to mention that we've just shared a solution brief via the handout section of your panel, and this covers Rivery's new Looker block in more detail. You can view or download this handout at any time throughout the webinar. And at this point, I'd like to hand it over to Taylor to begin our main discussion for today.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor McGrath, and I lead the customer solutions practice here at Rivery. Prior to this role, I worked in the data analytics space, where the bulk of my experience was in end-to-end data projects, implementing best-of-breed data stacks and enabling self-service data analytics across organizations. So I'll go ahead and dive into today's first topic, the core tenets of social analytics data stack. So to best understand this, I want to first highlight social media in a broader sense. So how is social media defined? Gartner defines it as the content used for purposes that are related to communities or social activities. Now, when we think about social media and how we use it in our lives, whether that's for a business or in our personal lives, we can all acknowledge that there is a bewildering amount of content from a growing number and variety of platforms, and that this plays a role in everyone's lives, which means it's creating this insane amount of data in an ever-growing number of places and systems. Which brings us to the practice of social analytics, or getting data from all these different platforms, bringing it together and analyzing it so that ultimately gives us some sort of meaning or value, which is typically in the form of insights that are used to make decisions. Now, the power of these social media platforms is truly colossal, with an essentially endless number of uses, which in turn means the data that is the content created in these channels and the various reactions to this content is not only bountiful in sheer volume, but in complexity and diversity of data types, data formats, outputs, and data relationships. Thus, the true power is not merely the creation of this content, but the ability to sift through it, bring it all together so it has meaning. This leads to justified business decisions that are fully backed by data. Now, I am going to introduce a poll that we'll be sending out. So feel free to fill that out. So now, this all sounds great. We have a bunch of content and we're going to analyze it. But in reality, this is filled with challenges, of which I'm sure a lot of you can relate. So, often I hear from companies that, the extent of their social analytics is manual downloads of pre-hashed and pre-aggregated reports pulled directly from each social platform's user interface. And this is usually from a plethora of different social platforms and multiple accounts or brands within each of these platforms. The start of this process is usually somewhat optimistic, with an analyst listing maybe the 5 or 6 platforms they want to pull and merge data from, and the fields and granularities they would need from each. However, once this process starts, one is quick to find that each platform's reporting functionality is structured differently and outputs data in completely different ways. Thus, not only is the actual pulling down of the data a manual task, but also the data prep and transformation required to merge data from multiple sources in various different formats. Now, this may be maintainable for a couple sources or a couple accounts, but it's not scalable. There's a good degree of effort required to onboard a new social platform or a new account to the existing reporting. Not to mention that this strategy often leads to saving files locally with varying aggregation levels and timeframes so that it is essentially impossible to have a single source of truth. Now, some companies are a bit farther along than this. They have initiatives in place to automate data ingestion processes by coding their own connections to social APIs. The issue with this approach is that of maintenance and available resources. These APIs tend to evolve, and thus connections to them will have to stay up to date with the latest versions, which, if kept in-house, means dedicated resources to maintain the upkeep of these processes. Scalability becomes a factor as well, where each new platform would require building and maintaining an additional connector. And the last challenge I want to touch on is the consumption of this data, and how with both the manual and home-built connector approaches, there still remains the struggle that is getting the data into one central repository and transformed into the same format or schema so that it can easily be used for exploration and further insights by a broader audience of end users. What tends to happen instead is that most exploration of data is done in the reporting suite of each platform, which is limiting for both cross-account and cross-platform tracking. Now that we've detailed the challenges with social analytics, which I'm sure hit home for some of you, how do we go about addressing them or alleviating this pain? In an ideal scenario, we would first establish a means of automating our data ingestion from a variety of sources into a cloud data warehouse. Not only should the initial creation of these processes be code-free and straightforward, user-friendly, but also the additions in regards to API upgrades and new sources we may wish to add in the future. The cloud data warehouse acts as our central repository to store and manage data from all of our social platforms. Using capabilities of our warehouse will transform our data so that regardless of its initial format, all data is aligned. For example, a field for daily organic impressions is likely named differently in every social API we're pulling data from. This is the area where we combine all the different naming conventions to create one master impressions field, let's say. Once we have all of our data in one format, or our single source of truth, so to speak, we can now easily use this data for consumption and exploration, whether that's in a modern BI and analytics tool, for data science modeling, or other applications. This enables the exploration of data to create integrated insights and can establish a true democratization of data within an organization. Now, I understand this sounds utopian, and I think the next question is, okay, that all sounds great, but how exactly do I go about accomplishing this? With a combination of cloud technologies that allow you to easily connect to your social media platforms in a code-free manner and automate these processes into a centralized location, followed by the ability to easily perform analysis that lead to insights. Rivery and Looker are tools that complement each other to complete this vision. Next, we'll do a brief intro to each tool, starting with Rivery. So I want to first highlight the common frustrations with cloud-based data integrations. First, the complexities and varieties of data formats and outputs. Thus, there's a need for a flexible solution that can account for a wide range of data characteristics. Next, the time and cost needed to automate these integrations internally. And lastly, the lingering fear of cloud, although native cloud tools are the best of breed. So now, where does Rivery come into the mix? Rivery is a cloud-native ELT platform that helps companies streamline their data collection and transformation processes across disparate sources. Social analytics is a common use case for us. However, in total, we support over 100 native connections of all types, such as ad platforms, CRM, payment systems, databases, and more. Rivery works in conjunction with a cloud data warehouse as its end target. Once data arrives in the cloud, users can perform analysis, run advanced analytics, or sync this data up with a front-end business intelligence tool such as Looker. Rivery provides API support, meaning both our native connections that are already available in the tool, as well as an on-demand API program for sources we don't support yet. Rivery has a robust capability for downstream data transformations, utilizing the power of the respective data warehouse. And lastly, we're a fully managed SaaS tool, meaning no installation or user managed setup of any kind. Just create an account, and in a couple clicks, you're ready to go. So for now, I'll pass it to Erin to give a quick intro to Looker.
Thanks, Taylor. So I'm Erin. I manage the partnership with Rivery at Looker. I'm just going to give a brief overview of what Looker is for context before we head into the demo of the mutual solution. So once you've centralized your data, transform that data in your data warehouse, Looker is really the next step. Looker is a unified data platform that delivers actionable business insights to employees at the point of decision. Well, what does that mean, and how does it work? So in kind of 3 differentiating ways, this is how Looker works. So Looker connects to a data warehouse, and we say it's 100% in database, meaning that Looker doesn't move data into another server, into memory. Sorry, the poll came up, or anything like that. We do all analytics in database, meaning you don't have to move your data. So data will be as real time as it's sourced into the database, and you can go down to the row level detail of the data that you're collecting. The way that Looker makes this data accessible, in a reporting interface and more, is via LookML. So LookML is our modeling layer. LookML is really an abstraction of SQL, and that's how Looker is able to do all analytics in database, is because our modeling layer, creates the SQL queries for the end user, whereas all they have to do is, click and drop the different business definitions they've created in that modeling layer to create those reports. So it allows a much larger set of users to be, data driven, and also trust the data that they're sourcing because it's based on this modeling layer, which has all the business logic defined. And then finally, Looker itself is a web application, so you just access it via the browser. It makes it really easy to share and collaborate and extend the functionality of Looker, which we'll get into in a second. So now we know how Looker works. What is Looker used for? So you've centralized your data, you've defined all your business logic in LookML. We've kind of summarized this into 4 key uses. So the first use would be the one that's most obvious, would just be modern business intelligence and analytics. So using Looker for reporting, creating dashboards, doing self-service analytics on the data itself in Looker's UI in the web. The second use case, extending Looker beyond just using the data within the application itself, would be integrated insights. So bringing data from Looker into tools and workflows that users are already familiar with and using in their day-to-day. So examples of this would be scheduling reports from Looker into Slack channels where they're relevant, bringing reports from Looker into applications like Salesforce. So at the account record, for instance, you could see usage data that had been, created, reports that have been created in Looker, things like that. So taking data and making it accessible not only in the core application itself, but also from other applications that folks are using. The third category would be data-driven workflows. So given Looker is that source of truth for an organization's data, using Looker to curate data sets that would power downstream applications. So in a marketing context, creating an audience in Looker from any number of data sources that have been centralized in the data warehouse, sending that directly to a marketing automation tool to target a campaign would be an example of that. Looker has a scheduling capability that makes it easy to send data, via email to file systems, but also to a whole host of third-party applications via Action Hub, and then also webhooks functionality, so you can build out your own. And then finally, custom applications. Looker, being a web application, is really easy to embed as iframes. We also have a JavaScript embed capability, so you can take the data from Looker, the Explorer experience from Looker, and build that into your own application to serve data to downstream, customers, vendors, whatever, even internally within your own website or application. Looker also has an API, so you can service the results of Looker to in your own way, not even using Looker's UI itself, as well as accomplish all the functionality of the application via the API as well. So now that you know what Rivery and Looker are, I'll introduce the Rivery and Looker solution for social media. What that looks like is basically Rivery would source the data into an underlying data warehouse and transform that data to make it accessible for analytics. You connect Looker to that data warehouse. And to make this process even easier, we've created what we call a Looker block. A Looker block is a template for Looker to get started with expected data sources really quickly, because LookML is really text-based, and because we can expect Rivery to deliver data around social analytics in a certain way, we can pre-model that data so customers can get up and running quickly with the Explore capability and dashboards that Taylor will show you in the demo. So I'll pass it over to her.
Awesome. Thanks, Erin. All right, so now for the fun part, let's demo the solution. Go ahead and share my window here. Okay, so navigating to my Looker account, what I have open here is a social analytics overview dashboard, which provides key KPIs for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter organic channels. So this first dashboard, our social analytics overview, shows things like follower count trending, organic insights such as impressions and reach for all of our channels. So the added value of this dashboard in particular is the ability to see cross-channel metrics, which here is normalized, let's say, by percent change. For example, in one glance, I can see how my brand's impressions are trending in Facebook versus how they are on Instagram. So Looker dashboards offer interactive functionality, such as the ability to toggle legend values, for example, as well as filter everything on my dashboard. So right here, what we're doing is comparing our KPIs week over week. If I wanted to do this month over month, for example, I could filter my time frame to month and then run, and I would now get the results with that filter applied. In addition, I can use Looker's drill down capability to drill into the data, let's say behind a high level KPI. So this expands my exploration into the underlying data that makes up a particular metric, such as the individual posts and their corresponding metrics. The next dashboard in the block is a specific dashboard at Twitter. It's our tweet performance dashboard. And the reason for this is Twitter has different types of engagement metrics than Facebook and Instagram, such as retweets and favorites. In addition, the Twitter API is structured a little bit differently. So there's no concept of page or account level engagement. Everything's done at the tweet or post level. Thus, the standard way of comparing periods of time may not make sense here. So we built in a post interval parameter instead. This means if my interval is set to 20, for example, then my KPIs will compare my most recent 20 posts to my previous 20 posts for a more apples to apples comparison, since I may have tweeted more times in, say, the past week than in the previous week, thus normalizing the comparisons here. And then lastly, we have an all channels post performance. So this is to show a post level performance dashboard, which consists of a table with post data spanning all channels. So this highlights the value add of being able to explore data from all social channels in a single location and easily filter by things like date, account name, or channel to look at underlying engagement metrics at the post level. So navigating back to my overview dashboard, let's say I wanted to further explore reach and impressions to my Facebook page. So clicking on an individual look will bring up a Looker Explore, which allows for further analysis of this visualization. So here we see the current setup, which is reach and impressions by week. We can also see the filters that are currently on this. So we can see that the channel filter is currently set to Facebook only. So let's say I actually wanted to expand this to also look at Instagram reach and impressions. I would just update this filter and then run with the latest results. I can also add dimensions to my analysis or pivot by them. So let's say I want to hone in on impressions, but pivot this by channel. So I can actually remove, let's say, my reach metric from the Explore, and then find my channel field on the left, my list of fields, and click pivot. And then once I run this, what you'll see here is I get for each channel that I'm filtering for, Facebook and Instagram, I now have that impressions metric separated by channel. And when I hit run, all of this is happening in real time against the data in my data warehouse. So what this ensures is that all analysis is happening against the same data set. Also, to see the underlying SQL that Looker is running, you can hit the SQL tab down here in the data pane. Thus, the Explore functionality allows for data drilling and analysis without requiring users to write SQL themselves, thus giving all types of end users the ability to perform analysis. Now, navigating to my settings menu, which is this little gear icon, I have a couple more options. One, I can download this data set locally, so I can choose what file format, and download this to my the underlying data to my machine. Also, I can save and schedule looks. So what that means is, let's say I want to save this, call it weekly impressions by channel. I'll save this look. Channel 2, save a new one. And then here I have the capability to schedule this data to come back to me, let's say via email or into file storage, or I can set this up to connect to other applications like Slack or some sort of CRM tool. And I can define what format, how often this data gets sent, and also some filters on the data as well. All right, so now that we've explored the data, let's take a look under the hood to see how the back end of these visuals are configured. So if I navigate to my develop screen and click into my social analytics Looker project, I can see this is a compilation of all of the LookML files that are the means for defining my dimensions and measures in my Looker project. But how do we get all this data from these different APIs into one unified view that can be optimized by Looker? What does that look like to configure and maintain? And that's where Rivery comes into the mix. So to give a look into what this looks like under the hood, I'm going to open up my Rivery console, my browser. So give me a second while I switch. Switch screens here. Okay, I'll give that a couple of seconds to load. So what you see here are predefined data pipelines, or rivers, as we call them, that are included in the social analytics solution. So these are templates for connecting to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter data. So clicking into one of these rivers, I see a series of steps. First, I name my river, and then I configure the source, which in this case is Facebook. This particular template is to pull page level stats. And you'll notice that my page window is empty, which means I'm pulling for all pages I have access to in the connection that I've made. Rivery supports multi-account or multi-brand ingestion, meaning I don't have to create different processes for each account. I can do it all at once. And I don't have to worry about updating anything when a new account is added. Every time the river runs, it will fetch all of my accounts. Next, I define my page fields and metrics that I want to pull, followed by the date range I want to pull for. The target tab is where we have the connection to our data warehouse, or where we're going to store this data. In this example, we're using Snowflake. Here we are simply designating what location in our data warehouse our Facebook page data will land. And the column mapping step allows us to auto-detect the format of the data coming from the source and see the fields that will exist in our table. And finally, we can choose to schedule our process as well as enable notifications if this river were to fail. Now, navigating back to my rivers list. One second. Switch my screen again. OK. All right, so I hope that gives a good understanding of each of these, that these rivers are templates for a specific data set coming from its corresponding social API. Now that covers getting raw data from our social sources to our data warehouse, but what about the process to combine the data so that the final result is one uniform view? That's where what we call a logic river comes into play. So this is Rivery's means for orchestration and data transformation. So to show this, I'll open up the social analytics logic river and navigate to the logic steps. You'll see this is a series of logical steps grouped into what we call containers. The first container is simply orchestrating our ingestion pulse. Note that this container is set to run in parallel, meaning that all of these steps will trigger at the same time. So this first set, if I break these out, is actually triggering our template rivers, for example, the Facebook pages one I just showed, to run. So this will initiate the ingestion from all of our social APIs. Once these rivers complete, we start the data transformation process for each channel. So you'll see Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter all have their own series of logic, and this is written in the SQL syntax of whatever data warehouse you're using. So this is really the process that's changing data types and renaming fields so that they all align for our final step, which combines all of these into one uniform view. Basically, if you have impressions coming out of Twitter API is a little different than getting impressions coming out of Facebook or Instagram. So in this step, what we do is we already have them all in the same format, and we're just putting them all together. And this is what makes it as simple as selecting a metric like impressions in a Looker Explorer and pivoting by channel so we can easily compare metrics cross-channel. With the Looker block for social analytics, your Rivery account comes with these rivers pre-populated so that all that's needed for implementation is to create connections to your social accounts and your desired data warehouse. On the Looker side, implementation of the block code is as simple as connecting your data warehouse and importing the block code to your Looker project. The LookML, explorers, and dashboards will then be ready to go. So this concludes our demo portion. So I'll stop screen sharing. All right, so now there are a lot of technologies out there and a lot of solutions. So I do just quickly want to highlight, why specifically Rivery and Looker for this social analytics use case. So first, both tools are fully managed SaaS. So since there's no installation or infrastructure maintenance required, the time to value is much faster than with tools that are not cloud native. Both are built to scale, whether that's a growing amount of accounts or channels or just volume of data in general. And I also want to highlight the service part of software as a service. So both tools have public communities where anyone in the ecosystem can find best practices, discussions, or ask questions, as well as top-tier customer support. Rivery and Looker not only work well with each other, but partner with best-of-breed cloud data warehouses to complete the ideal social analytics stack. And in terms of development, both tools require similar skill sets. So the transformations in Rivery, as well as the LookML and Looker, are SQL-based, meaning no programming or code skills are required. And lastly, with Rivery and Looker in your stack, you can truly close the loop, meaning not only ingest data from your sources to consume, but using something like Looker's schedule feature, send data back to a certain tool or system to fully close that loop. All right. At this point, I'll hand it back over to Alex. Thanks everyone for listening.
All right. Thank you, Taylor and Aaron. We're going to open it up now for questions and answers. We've got some questions here in the pipeline, but again, if anyone has additional questions, the Q&A panel is still open, so feel free to send those through at any time. Looking at our questions here, I think this first one is for you, Taylor. The question is, what is the effort to add a new connector, let's say Snapchat, to the existing solution?
Yeah, sure. So as you saw in the demo, the Rivery portion for each connector is a pipeline to collect data from the source, and then the necessary transformations needed for each channel. So to add an additional one, we simply have to replicate this for snapshot, let's say. Once the final table is updated, there are no changes needed on the Looker side. So all of the data will be available in your project, your Explorer. There will just be like a fourth channel value to slice your data by and analyze.
Great. Next question here. I think this is on Looker blocks. Aaron, can you share some more information on the Looker blocks? What does it take to implement them?
Yep. So Looker blocks, as I mentioned, are templates for LookML, which is Looker's modeling layer. We have a whole catalog of blocks that you can see in our directory on looker.com, as well as in our marketplace, which is within the Looker application itself. So if deploying through the marketplace, assuming that you've got the data pipeline from the partner that's associated with the block, that's a click to deploy model versus some of our more some other blocks are in our directory, and that's copy paste of that LookML into Looker to get up and running quickly. So we've worked directly with our partners on building these out, so they should be as plug and play as possible to get you up and running with analysis on those data sources.
Great. Let's see, next question here. So I noticed the block is using all organic insights data. How would you go about adding paid data to the existing solution? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So similar to adding a new channel, this would require building a river from the corresponding ads APIs, such as Facebook ads, to get paid insight. Also, some insights or organic APIs are combined with their paid data. So this would just be a matter of adding the paid metrics to the existing templates. But yeah, very possible.
Great. Let's see, next question here. Again, this one is on Looker. Do you need to be technical to use Looker?
So I think we hit on this a bit in the development environment. So configuring LookML, it is SQL based. So you need at least one person who's familiar with SQL, who would be the developer for LookML. But once that LookML model has been established, anyone can leverage the bulk of the Looker application. It doesn't require any even SQL skills or any coding skills, as the LookML model itself manifests in a click and drop interface. So you can dive into the data, and then Looker takes care of writing the SQL for that end user. And then of course, as dashboards are configured and things like that, anyone can leverage those as well.
Great. And we also have, well, no, let's see here. Yeah, that looks like all the questions we have in the pipeline. So I think that concludes the presentation for today. If anyone does still have questions that they'd like to ask, or if there's something that we may have missed, please reach out to us at contact@rivery.io, and we'd be happy to get you an answer. Additionally, we'll be conducting more webinar sessions moving forward. So please look out for those on our website. And if there are any specific topics that you'd like us to cover in the future, be sure to let us know. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today. And thank you again to Aaron and Taylor for a great presentation.